Welcome back to the Audio Academy podcast. I'm your host, Georgie Jameson, and this week's Summer Shorts podcast features some previously unheard audio from my chat earlier in the year with radio royalty, Stephanie Hirst. Stephanie is a fellow of the Audio Academy and a former trustee. She presents Spinning the Decades on Greatest Hits Radio every Saturday, 4 till 7 p.m, as well as shows on Greatest Hits 60s and Hits Radio Pride. Also, every Saturday night from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m, you can hear her present Belters on Hits Radio, which celebrates its 5th anniversary at the end of August. I asked Stephanie about her love affair with vinyl and the all-request vinyl hour on Greatest Hits Spinning the Decade. But first, we talked about the success of Belters on Hits Radio.
It's the most listened to show on the Rayo app, Belters, because it's these 3 hours of these huge 90s and noughties and 10s dance throwbacks. I've started dropping in a little few 2020s tunes because we're 6 years into the decade now. And there's loads of big, dance tunes from the earliest part of this decade. And then I play a future belter, which is a big new tune, which is out right now. And as I like to call it, tearing up dance floors. And then I play a vinyl belter. So I managed to get some vinyl on hit. I do a vinyl belter, which is a big dance tune from the 90s or noughties. Probably 90s because back in clubs in the 90s and noughties, we were still playing vinyl up until probably mid-noughties. And I've got all these 12-inch dance tunes that are just sitting gathering dust. Although I do play them live when we do our Belters live events, which I tour Belters as a show. So I do that. So I do a lot of stuff.
Spinning the Decades on Greatest Hits, 4 till 7. You do an hour of vinyl as well, don't you? Requests.
Yes, the middle hour between 5 and 6 is all vinyl. So, and it's live vinyl requests using my own personal record collection, of which there's a lot. So I've been collecting vinyl since I was 5 years old. I got my first single was Baggy Trousers by Madness. That was bought for me. And then my mum would take me to the record shop. We couldn't afford chart singles. So I had to get ex-jukebox ones that had been in a jukebox. I had the middles knocked out, which they call that dinking. I didn't know that. Yeah, they're dinked out. The middles are dinked out. I think because they make the noise dunk when they dink them out, I think I probably could be corrected on that. But yeah, so I used to get one ex-jukebox single at 25p or maybe 2 if I was good. And that built my collection. There is a clip of me on the first time I was ever on the radio. I was on a competition on Radio Air, which was my local independent radio station, which I'll come to in a moment, actually. There's a cute thing about doing this show, but I'll come to that in a sec. So I used to listen to Radio Air on 96.3, and it was just wonderful. And a guy called Carl Kingston, who we sadly lost recently, and he was a mentor to me and Chris Moyles, and he really took us under his wing and showed us the way of radio and how to get the best out of the mixing desk and the processor and make it sound hot like American radio. And he used to do this thing called the Radio Air Pop Computer, where you could call Leeds 0532 if you're outside the Leeds area, 455362. And this is before I got to meet him.
I love how you still remember the number.
Oh, the phone numbers. Yeah, I'm all over phone numbers. I think I talk about in the Crunch and Roll podcast, which is definitely worth checking out, talk in depth about my love for the former Viking FM phone number, which is 01482 226222. It just rolls off the tongue. I like phone numbers.
In fact, I actually said today, I think this might be a specially extended version of the Audio Academy podcast because, to my knowledge, Steph is the only person to get a double episode on Crunch and Roll. There was 2 parts.
Oh, I did, yeah, randomly. I think I just talk too much. Yeah, I've got a real love of radio station phone numbers. Anyway, so I rang Carl, got on. It was the first time I was on the radio. Oh, it was just wonderful. But Carl says to me, have you got any interests? Do you like to collect anything? And I go, records. And he's like, oh, really? So his ears clearly pricked up. I later learned that Carl had got this big, massive record collection, which my record collection is based on Carl's record collection. We lost Carl a couple of years ago, but his record room was just like, oh my word, it was incredible. You'd go in and it was just floor to ceiling, all around, just vinyl. And I was like, this is just... So I saw that. It was amazing. Carl says to me, how many have you got? And I said, and I'm about 10 years old at this point, and I say, about 250. And as a 10-year-old, I had 250 records. So I've been at this thing for a long time collecting. And then when DJs and fellow broadcasters and friends during the 1990s and noughties, and, they were getting rid of vinyl. They were just throwing it away. Do you want these records? Because they never thought this format would come back. CD had taken over. Downloads were just starting to happen. It wasn't something that anyone thought would make a massive resurgence. But I think as humans, we like things that are tangible. It's part of the senses, the touch, the hear, all that kind of stuff. And you want to feel it. And the album art, the stunning album art. Dad had War of the Worlds, Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds. That's an incredible album art. The gatefold cover on that and the booklet that comes with it. And then I saw Madness on TV singing Baggy Trousers. And I was like, I like that. And then I got a radio when I was 7.
I got a radio when I was 7 as well.
Yeah.
I got a little transistor radio for the side of my bed and an alarm clock for my 7th birthday because I wanted to get up early and listen to the Radio 1 breakfast show.
Oh, my word. So that would have been what? Mike Reed or someone like that or Simon Mayo?
It was 77.
Oh, right. So it's Noel Edmonds. It was Noel Edmonds.
It was Noel Edmonds, yeah.
Well, I've still got my first radio and it's in my office here. In my studio, it's on the windowsill. And I look at it and it's tuned to 96.3. The aerial's broken off, so I very much doubt it would pick it up. So yeah, it's tuned to 96.3, which is greatest hits frequency now. The thing is, I own Radio Air's turntables. So behind me is one of the EMT 948 turntables. And these are the original Radio Air turntables that when I was a child, listening to Radio Air, the DJs were playing them from these turntables that I own. And now when I'm doing the show on Greatest Hits, I am playing vinyl on the Radio Air turntables, which is also on that frequency of 96.3 in West Yorkshire.
Because you describe yourself as a radio nerd.
But I can't get my head around that. That's literally blown my mind.
No. Because equipment, I mean, you have got bits of stuff from people's studio. I mean, you collect stuff. There's carts behind you right now.
This studio is getting a refit soon. I'm not going to get rid of a lot of the equipment. There is some stuff that just is here because I've kept it here for years and it doesn't need to be here. So the carts are going, of the radio anoraks would be going, what the hell? You're getting rid of carts. I don't need them. I don't use them. I want it to look a little sexier. So I'm going to put some screens up in Hessian and have it professionally done. But playing them from those turntables in that hour on that frequency, the 10-year-old version of me is having kittens. The 15-year-old version of me is having kittens. Well, I've always said I'm a radio nerd and I studied this thing. But you've got to have a life. If you don't have a life, you've got nothing to talk about on the radio. For me, it's different with a lot of the shows that I do now, or they're music related. So, Greatest Hits, Spinnin the Decades is sharing incredible stories about these songs that come from the world's, greatest decades. But if you're doing a personality driven show, you do need things to talk about. You need real life. You need life experience. So if you're just sitting listening to the radio non-stop and not having a life, you've not really got much to talk about. So you need to go out, you need to have a life experiences. And remember, less is always more. And it's always you before I. It's always the audience comes first every single time. You before I. If you're framing a story up, so you want to tell a story about yourself, it's like, have you ever done this? So it's you first. I mean, that's not the greatest example, but it is just saying that it's you first. You must have done this. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where because I was the other day, I was doing it, but you framed it up as it's not about you because you've put the audience first. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. And always less is more. Know when the peak of the link is over. You hear, when I was doing breakfast shows, if somebody said something funny or everyone laughed within the first 40, 50 minute, something like that. As soon as everyone laughed, that's the peak of the link. I just hit the song, get out. You'll spend another couple of minutes trying to find something as funny or something funnier and it loses momentum. Sometimes I got out too early and we could have, missed some gold. But when you've said what you've wanted to say pretty much and then something funny happens, play a song, get out. Less is always more.
A massive thank you to Stephanie Hirst. It's always great fun chatting to her and hearing her wisdom about what makes great radio. Our search for the next 30 Under 30 closes on the 21st of August, so get your application or nomination in as soon as possible. To find out more and to apply, go to audioacademy.org.uk/30 Under 30. Bursaries for the Audio Academy Festival this autumn close on the 9th of August. Go to audioacademy.org.uk/bursaries to apply. And don't forget that festival tickets are on sale now with some great names already announced as speakers. Book your tickets at audioacademy.org.uk/festival. Next week, our Summer Shorts podcast looks back at some of the highlights of our Meet the Fellows series. I'll see you next week.